Now, if we just add stuff with replace, listen to what happens. Hi, this is Andre. One of the main goals of this video series has always been to cover looping possibilities that are not widely known. That's always been a second best solution for me because the best way to understand how we can use something is to work with it ourselves, hands-on. Now, in order to work with tools, we need to have access to them, but more obscure looping functions are often not available in very many devices. And if those functions are not widely understood, it can be challenging for a developer to want to include them in the first place. So this series has always attempted to demonstrate concepts that are not widely talked about so that people can at least learn about these kinds of things even if they can't actually work with them themselves. I mention all of this because I recently started working with the Line 6 HX Stomp, and I've been really pleasantly surprised at how flexible it is. It has a wide array of different audio effects, but there's also a modular degree of control over how different kinds of audio processing can be combined. Because the Helix ecosystem is very popular and widely used, it's a great platform for letting people play with some more obscure looping ideas simply by configuring the available tools in some relatively unconventional ways. The HX Stomp already has some capable loopers in its stock library, but this video looks at putting together a looping solution based around a delay rather than a dedicated looper module. We talk about not just how to do this, but why we might choose to do so in the first place, and some of the possibilities this creates that the stock looper modules don't offer. Now, we do start at a very basic ground floor level, and depending on your familiarity with looping, some of these ideas might be ones you're already aware of. So I encourage using the timestamps to jump to new subjects and skip ones you're already familiar with. But there's a good chance we're going to talk about at least one or two concepts you haven't tried before. This is about using the widespread Helix ecosystem to make some uncommon looping possibilities more readily available to explore. As always, thank you very much for tuning in. Alright, we are starting off with a pretty straightforward HX Stomp patch. We have a compressor, an amp model, and a reverb. This is just for the basic sound that we're using. So we're going to add a delay to the signal path. We're going to use the simple delay. It's the most straightforward delay available. And if we play into it, you've got a pretty straightforward delay sound. Now, if we increase the feedback, it takes longer for the sound to fade out. If we bring feedback all the way up to 100%, it repeats infinitely, which sounds like a loop to me. Now, if we bring feedback down, but keep adding new layers to the loop, listen to what happens. And I'm just going to bring it down to like 90 something. Bring it back up. So this is a completely different loop than it was just a few seconds ago. And we got that change just by bringing feedback down, fading old layers out, and also having new layers added to the loop at full volume. So feedback is often thought of as just a way to get an automatic fade out of a loop, but it's a lot more than that. It's also a way to develop and evolve the content of a loop. Now here's one other really important thing. I'm going to increase the length a little bit, partially because we get that awesome garbled sound. But also because if we do this, if we bring feedback all the way down, you'll hear that we only get one repeat. That's all we get, because feedback at 0 means you only get one repetition. I'm going to bring the mix up to 50-50, because I figure the odds be 50-50. All right, we're going to bring feedback back up to 100 and build up kind of a sustainy, drony kind of thing. So listen to what happens if I click feedback down to 0 directly and then bring it back up. So right at the point where we clicked it down to 0, we get that hard cutoff. And then as we slid feedback back up to 100%, it faded back in. So feedback can also be used to sculpt changes in volume within the loop itself, not just fading the entire loop out, but also basically carving swells or hard cutoffs into the loop. This is going to be really significant for what we're going to be talking about very soon. So let's do one other thing. We're going to change the time from seconds to divisions of tempo. And we're going to do that so that we can use the tap tempo function on the HX Stomp to let us tap in a length. So 1, 2, 3, 4, boom. That kind of idea. Just so that we have the option of being able to determine the length of the delay based on what we want to play rather than having to have the delay set the length and then we have to conform our playing to that. All right, so right now, the biggest problem we have with using this delay as a looper is that we can't control whether or not we're sending the live input signal into the loop. Right now, everything we play gets added to the delay. And that's fine for a lot of things, but we probably want to have the option of whether or not we're adding live input in there. This is basically what we would call an overdub function in 99% of the loopers in existence. So let's do this. We're going to drag the delay down, and that creates a secondary audio path. So now we have two audio signals. There's this top signal here, which is just the dry guitar signal, and then there's this secondary audio signal down here, which is where the delay comes in. And then they come back up to meet at this point, this merge point, and you can see if we select that, we have a mixer to control the relative levels of everything. So let's move the delay over a couple of notches because we're going to be adding some blocks in front of that shortly. We're going to bring the mix on the delay all the way up to 100%. And we're going to play a couple of things. So far, that sounds basically the same, but if we come over to the point where the signals merge, you can hear now that if we bring the level of B down, we're not hearing the delay anymore. We are hearing the live guitar, because the live guitar is on the A input of the mixer. If we bring B back up, we're going to hear that note that we just played is in the loop. And if we bring the A level all the way down, we're not going to hear any live guitar, but we do hear that stuff being added into the loop. And then if we bring A level back up, now we'll hear both of them at more or less equal volume. Okay, bring feedback down, just to clear this out. So now we have the delay and the live guitar on two independent signals. Now what we're going to do is add a block in front of the delay, which is going to control whether or not the signal gets into the delay in the first place. So we're going to add a volume pedal block, and this is going to act as an overdub function. So right now, the position, this is basically how far forward or back the virtual volume pedal is. If the position is at 100%, that means that we're getting all of the signal coming through the volume pedal and being sent to the delay. So now if we bring the position down, this is the equivalent of closing the virtual volume pedal. And you can see none of that is being added in there. So let's do this. I'm going to clear out the delay because that's going to bug me sooner than later. There we go. Feedback for the win. So we're going to come to the volume control. We're going to go to the controller assign, and we want to control the position. And we're actually going to assign the position to foot switch 2. which is the middle position on the HX Stomp. So now, if we come over here and we click that middle foot switch, now you can see we're toggling back and forth between having it all the way open, all the way closed. If it's lit up, that means it's open, which is effectively meaning that we're overdubbing. So let's overdub. Then let's close overdub and noodle gratuitously over the top. Let's add to the loop. And then let's noodle gratuitously some more. And so forth. All right, so now we have an overdub function. Huzzah, we've invented overdub. Amazing. So now let's do this. We're going to bring feedback down again and clear out the sound of the loop. And we're going to make sure that overdub is closed. Let's double check the display. Volume block. Yes, it's down. So if we play, nothing gets added. We're going to add a second volume control right in front of the one we just created. This is a second volume knob, volume pedal, I should say. And this is going to be used as the foundation for a replace function. And a replace function overwrites audio. It doesn't layer new sound on top of old sound. It basically overwrites the old sound and literally replaces it with new sound. So we're going to use this in a few different ways. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to assign bypass for both of these volume pedals to foot switch 1. So if we come to that volume control and we have the bypass there, we assign that to foot switch 1. Same thing for the first volume pedal block that we made. We're going to assign that to foot switch 1 as well. And right now they're both active. I'm going to turn one of them off. So now as I tap on this first foot switch, what's happening is we're toggling between having one or the other of these volume controls active. Now, why do we need that? We need that because of the way that replace is going to function and the way that we're going to get a replace thing happening. We're also going to do this. So right now it's a latching connection. That means that press and release once, it selects one block, press and release a second time, it selects a different block. We're going to turn that into a momentary connection. That means that it's only going to switch bypass states for as long as we hold it down. So hold it down, it switches to that front volume pedal control, but if we release it, it switches back to the original one. So it's a momentary connection. It only changes for as long as we're holding the pedal down. So let's do this. We are going to play stuff. Amazing concept. We're going to play stuff. We have overdub closed. And we're just going to play stuff, and we're just going to drop stuff in with this replace function on the left-hand side. So as you can hear, we're not overdubbing everything. We're just overdubbing whatever we were playing while the switch is held down. So it's a way of very selectively being able to drop stuff in or out. Now, if we have overdub open on the first volume block we made, you're not going to hear that effect because we basically have overdub open all the time. But part of the idea of getting this drop-in effect, I'm going to bring feedback down to erase this because that's driving me nuts. Part of the idea here is that when we use this momentary replace function, we're not overdubbing everything we're playing. We're just being very selective about dropping very tiny short bits. That kind of idea. Let's bring feedback down yet again. So this is a cool way of being very selective with adding short snippets into an overdub, but we're still overdubbing. We're still adding new audio on top of old layers. But for a replace effect, we want to actually overwrite the audio. So remember that at the beginning of the video, we talked about how bringing feedback down will cause the audio to fade out. And if you click directly to a 0 feedback position, it will punch a hole in the loop. So we're going to go over to delay. We're going to select the feedback parameter. There we go. And we're going to assign that to foot switch 1. And let's take a look at the delay. So now if we do foot switch 1, there we go. So now press, hold it, it's at full feedback, and release, it's at 0 feedback. That's almost exactly what we want. But right now, the normal state is going to be that feedback is usually at 0%, and it's only at 100% if we hold it down. We actually want the opposite arrangement. We want to have feedback at 0 only as we depress the pedal. So we're going to go back to the controller assignment, and we're going to flip the minimum and maximum feedback relationship around. So now minimum feedback is at 100%, maximum feedback is at 0. I know that sounds like it makes no sense, but in practice, it means that we can do this kind of thing. I'm going to play some longer tones. Oh, overdub's not open. Hee hee, I totally meant to do that, right? And feedback is at 0. Get it together, Andre. There we go. Okay. There we go. I promise I know what I'm doing at least some of the time. All right, so now I am just going to hold a note. I'm turning overdub off. So right now that note isn't getting added into the loop because we have overdub off. But now I'm going to hold that note and I'm just going to stomp on that left-hand switch. So you can hear there, it completely overwrites the audio just for the length of time that we're holding the switch down. Because just for the length of time we hold the switch down, we have feedback going to 0. And as soon as we release the switch, it's going back to 100%. Now let's go one step further with this idea. Right now, you don't hear the change in the loop until the next repetition after you do it. So in other words, if I stomp on the replace switch right now, we're not going to hear it immediately. We'll hear it on the next repetition, like this. So you don't hear the effect as you're doing it, you hear it on the next repetition after. That's a cool effect. In Echoplex Digital Pro terminology, that's called substitute. In Lupe terminology, it's also called substitute. In Luperlative terminology, I think it's called replace plus original. It's a great effect, but let's say that we actually want to cut out the level of the loop immediately as we're doing the effect. So in order to get that happening, we're going to go back to the delay parameters. We're going to select level, which is the output volume of the delay, and we're going to assign that to foot switch 1 as well. So now you can see that as we hold it down, we have feedback and level changing. But here again, we want the level to be up as a normal state and then coming down when we hold it down. Right now it's the opposite arrangement. So we're going to go back to bypass controller assign, delay, foot switch, and again, we're going to swap out the minimum and maximum levels. The only thing to be careful of is that this has a maximum level of plus 6 dB, but we're going to keep it at 0 so that the volume is equal. So now if we step on that replace button, you can see that feedback and level are changing at the same time. So if we do a regular overdub, and then use the replace thing, you'll hear that as soon as we hold down the replace switch, the audio of the loop cuts out. This can be really useful, especially if you want to do stuff that's a little more rhythmically oriented. Your mileage may vary, but I personally find it much easier to be rhythmically precise with a replace function when I hear its effect immediately as I'm doing it. If we use a substitute type of approach, that can be great for sneaking the effect in, but I personally find it harder to do more rhythmically precise types of things with that. All right, we've cleared out the loop with feedback. Let's try using tap tempo to set up a loop length that's user-defined. There we go. Now we can drop stuff in using replace. And you can hear as we keep adding new stuff, the texture stays thin. We don't get this big building up sound like we would if we were overdubbing like this. This doesn't sound bad necessarily, if I do say so myself, but it's a big texture. Every time we add new stuff to the loop, it gets bigger. Now, if we just add stuff with replace, listen to what happens. You can hear that we're dramatically changing the loop really quickly, but it also stays thin. We don't have these big layers of sound. Not that there's anything wrong with big layers of sound, but it's nice to have the option of changing things and adding new audio in there without having that big build. Now let's do this. Let's go to a slower tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4, hold replace. I'm not going to think about a strict rhythm. I'm just going to add some stuff in there. Everything we've been talking about so far has involved either overdubbing or using replace, but you can do both at the same time. So we're going to leave overdub open. And as we do that, we're going to use replace. So everything that we play is going to get added into the loop. When we use replace, it's going to overwrite whatever is in the loop as we hold that switch down. If we're not holding that switch down, it's going to be a regular overdub. So let's have a listen to that. So you're kind of getting both effects at the same time. And you could be selective. You could build up layers and just have one spot that's going to be replaced. This is more than one spot, but you get the idea. Let's do some tap tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Little lumpy. do some replace stuff. And you can hear it's very easy to change the content of the loop dramatically and quickly. And let's say we want to have the snares completely cut off the volume.